much too complex, too complex, much too complex, too complex, too complex, too complex.
Good afternoon. My name is James K. Holder II. Some of you may know me as Sir James II, and I'd like to welcome you back to Not on My Watch. As always, I'd like to ask you to subscribe, like, comment, and share. I want you to retweet this and repeat this. If you're watching, today is Wednesday, May 24th, 2017. And I would like to start off by first of all saying a very sincere rest in peace to Sir Roger Moore. This is the star of many of my favorite James Bond films. Now, I will say that as someone named James and who attended elementary school around the time that Fox Kids aired its show called James Bond Jr., I did not really take to this franchise until way later in my adult life. But Roger Moore is one of my favorite Bonds. I just think he brought a level of sort of kitschiness to the franchise that I like. And it wasn't even so much him, but it was just him and Jaws in like Moonraker and all those other, installments of the franchise. One of my favorites, of course, is Live and Let Die. But my favorite is probably A View to a Kill, which featured Grace Jones as Mayday, and she just celebrated her birthday. So I want to keep all of these people in our prayers. Grace Jones, happy belated birthday, and also rest in peace, Roger Moore. It is also a rough week for the UK because just the other day, Monday actually, 22 people were killed in a terrorist attack in Manchester, United Kingdom. And so we definitely want to just keep those people in prayer and in our minds. The good news is that Donald Trump is out of the country. He's been abroad for a few days now, not too long. But in that amount of time, he's managed to embarrass himself in a new level of ways. And so, not to spend too much focus on this, but, the weather has been fairly terrible all across the country, but Trump's gone. And I realized the other day, I would trade 8 years of sunshine for the end of a Trump presidency. I wouldn't miss the sun that much. I mean, not like Aurora Borealis, like no sun, but just sort of, cloudy days. I could take 8 years of cloudy days, consistent, and some rain, if we could get rid of Donald Trump. So, the powers that be right now, this morning, Donald Trump, it was probably this afternoon for them at the Vatican, but he was visiting with the Pope, Pope Francis, who is just like the sweetest guy, right? And he's really like progressive for a Pope. Who doesn't like Pope Francis except Donald Trump? Now remember, Donald Trump talked a lot of junk about Pope Francis during the election. And so you're seeing, not that he holds grudges, but you're seeing like photos come out of the Trumps meeting with Pope Francis. And for some reason, Melania and Ivanka are dressed like they're going to a funeral. And I feel like that's how we should be dressed. But hey, they're there and they're dressed in black and veils and all this stuff. And it's just kind of seeing him out and Melania slapping his hand away. And seeing him in Saudi Arabia signing the largest arms deal ever with Saudi Arabia. At the same time, Ivanka Trump's foundation receiving a contribution of, don't quote me on this, but $100 million to her charitable foundation. And all the while, you've got papers like the Washington Post and the New York Times talking about how brave Melania Trump is and how brave Ivanka Trump is and how feminism works and how much of a statement on feminism it is that they're going through these Muslim countries without headdresses. And it's really just quite absurd. So I just want to bring a focus back and then quickly dismiss it and talk more about what's been going on in our country while Trump's been abroad. Last night, for the first time ever, Democrats in the state of New Hampshire took over a state house seat, and this is in Wolfboro, New Hampshire. This is a district that Trump won by 7 points, and yet yesterday, this state house seat was taken back by the Democrats, and it's actually the first flip since the election from red to blue. And so that's something we can be proud of. You know, there's some people out there saying, oh, it's not a big deal because it's just a state house seat, but that's where the real decisions are made. I mean, if we want to talk about the beginning, if we're trying to forestall the unforgivable, we're talking about constitutional amendments, that happens at the state legislature too. We've got to have a much broader focus on the resistance in terms of these smaller, pieces. And the state houses is what determines a lot of things like campus gun legislation, which is now law in Georgia. We thought it was going away, but it came back. It came right back. And so we have to focus on the major issues that happen at the local level as well in the resistance. And so this is a huge step in that direction. Again, this is the first Democrat ever elected in that district. And that is something that we can be excited about and proud of. Carrying on, a few days ago, there was actually a ruling by the Supreme Court of the United States that upholds a decision striking down North Carolina's gerrymandering map. Now, this is from a 2012 to 2014 map, which basically drew lines around every black person in the state of North Carolina and constricted them into 3 specific targeted districts. So you have, the map is on the screen now, but you have this. When people talk about the dangers of gerrymandering, you can see it very clearly in North Carolina. And it is good, and it's sort of it's relieving to see that the courts, even though the court is corrupted, even though we have this branch of government that is clearly polluted by the appointment of Neil Gorsuch, they are still operating right now in some reasonable fashion. And so I think that looking at New Hampshire, looking at North Carolina, we're really seeing what the resistance is about. It's not this big, light them up, this immediate, everything's going to turn back around, Trump's going to get impeached like that. What it is, it's a slow drip, and it's steady and consistent and persistent. And we have to be focused on these smaller races. So we've seen this. The SCOTUS ruled that this gerrymandering map was unconstitutional. And you can look at it and tell that when you have a state as large and growing and diverse as North Carolina, that gerrymandering really contributes to the way that House seats are divided up at the federal level, at the nationwide, the House of Representatives within Congress. And it's discouraging because, that's what it's going to take. A lot of people, Senate races are statewide. So gerrymandering doesn't affect Senate races to the same extent that it does House of Representatives. But it does contribute to just confusion overall and making it redistricting and making it harder for people to find their polling locations changing, making it harder for people to carpool to different polling locations, making it harder for communities to work together and really get the vote out and really advance the vote because of the way certain laws and districts are portioned out. So the House of Representatives obviously is the beginning point. It's the jump-off point, the springboard for an impeachment. And so it's important that as long as Donald Trump has this, or the GOP rather, has a stronghold on gerrymandering, which ultimately is decided by the state legislature of whichever state, but then can be overruled by the Supreme Court. Right now, it is, again, refreshing to see that the Supreme Court of the United States is still working to sort of uphold some aspects of voting rights better than I would expect them to be. And so that's encouraging. It's not something we should be relaxed about, because if the court continues to tip to the right, we're going to see changes in that, right? We're going to see a difference and regression in those types of attacks. And we're seeing even today in Texas, this is coming up. An emergency vote is being taken at the Texas state legislature to really, in regards to voting rights. I mean, and this is just, I bring it up only because this is something that the Supreme Court has been staying their decisions on. Big states like Texas, states like Wisconsin, we're seeing, states like North Carolina. And so we have to be encouraged that there is an effort that is ongoing by the GOP to continually strip people of their rights, to continually gerrymander these districts, to continually enact voter ID, to continually enforce these policies that make it harder for people to vote. And that somehow there's, in some way, we're remaining either imbalanced and we're not losing ground on that front. So as long as we keep pushing, we will see that, you know, the resistance is real and there's a path forward. What's interesting about what happened in New Hampshire and also North Carolina is that these are things that are coming up as Trump is out of the country. Trump isn't tweeting about this race that happened in Wolfsboro County in New Hampshire. He's abroad. He's distracted. He's exhausted. You know, you've got all these other things, and maybe it made me think. I was like, well, maybe what if our approach to this is wrong? What if a big part of our strategy is simply to distract the distractor in chief? A big bullet point of Trump's, you know, ability to really gain traction and all of the things that he's doing is to throw out these ridiculous budget proposals, to make ridiculous comments and accusations against Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, to call Jim Comey a nutbag, to reveal classified information to Russia. I mean, he's doing all these things, and yes, these are dangerous things, but also a big part of it is just, it's a distraction. And so we've seen the resistance has gained a lot of ground since he's been out of the country. And not for nothing, maybe Trump-Russia, the investigation, and a continual, you know, all of this stuff is coming to a head. And even if it ends in nothing, even if nothing is found, even if no collusion is proven, he's thrown off his game by the Trump-Russia investigation. You can tell he's flustered by it. And we have to continually to be a thorn in his paw, because that is a part of resistance. So I would like to call, just for right now, silence from Michael Moore, Nina Turner, the Young Turks, Bernie Sanders, anyone right now who's basically saying to Democrats that Democrats need to focus on getting, on passing single-payer health care as opposed to Trump-Russia. Because if you think that with this Congress and their willingness to pass and push forward AHCA, which is basically a federally funded tax cut to billionaires, the billionaire class, if you think we're going to go from that bent where they are now in voting to single-payer, which is significantly more expensive than ACA, you're nuts. So that's bullshit from the alt-left. And we have to, again, resist the alt-left just like we resist the alt-right. What they're calling for is working to distract the resistance and discredit the resistance, and we can't let that happen. And so, again, Michael Moore went from gun-ho, we immediately need to impeach Trump, to once he got his deal signed at Cannes, that the Cannes Film Festival, which is an interesting place to find a blue-collar, working-class champion like Michael Moore, parlaying in the French Riviera. But, as soon as he got this deal to make Fahrenheit 11.9, which talks about the dangers of the Trump presidency, he's immediately backing off impeachment. He's immediately backing off the resistance. And now he's talking about how people promoting the idea of a Trump impeachment are dangerous, that it's harmful to promote this idea, when really we've seen the harm caused by this sect of people. And so we have to keep an eye on them. But the other thing that is encouraging, we talked about in a previous episode, the resistance versus the state of Georgia, or state of Georgia versus the resistance. I believe it was episode 14 or 15, where we interviewed Nsé Ufot of the New Georgia Project. And they were plaintiffs in a lawsuit against the state of Georgia, or the Secretary of State, who was working to basically black out registration for the runoff election in Georgia 06 by 90 days. And the Voting Rights Act basically states that for any election, you have 30 days. That was a big move. And as a result, we talked about the 17,000 backlogged applications for new registrations within that county. Those are in the process of being added to the voter logs. 19,000 in Fulton County. Because of this extension, it's really not an extension, it's just a reversal to the original deadline that was this Monday, Sunday rather, the 21st, to register within the Georgia 06 district to be a new voter within the runoff. We've seen, again, 19,000 voters in Fulton County apply, 4,000 in DeKalb. And as a result, as of now, since that deadline that was Sunday, the 21st, we've seen 5,500 new voters registered within Georgia 06. They're still adding new people to the logs. And remind you, this is a county that Hillary Clinton lost in 2016 by less than 1,000 votes. So 5,500 new applicants is a significant portion, a significant number. But even counting on the more that will come, the more that are added to that, we can be encouraged as a resistance. We can be encouraged as Georgia residents, along with the repair of our highway, Georgia 85 South and North, and is back connected to the connector and to 400. So those are things that we can be happy about. The streets are flowing again. Hopefully, this will be a strong move for people to be encouraged and excited and have accessibility to the polls for that vote. So we will see on June 20th where the chips fall for this race with Jon Ossoff versus Karen Handel. And I got to tell you, watching TV in this area, it is heavily advertised. I mean, you can't, every segment, it is just one ad, one or the other. So there's a lot of motivation, a lot of energy behind this race. And as of right now, Jon Ossoff, in the latest polling, Jon Ossoff was polling 7 points ahead of Karen Handel. And so I don't want you to take that wrong. That is not a cause for celebration, because between voter ID, between just sort of the delays, they might have long lines, they might have intimidation by the Klan again in Georgia, they might have a bunch of things going on in this district that we have to be mindful of. But remain focused, get out the vote. Hopefully they will continue to add new voters to this district, and that people will be able to exercise their franchise there freely. But, it's all a step in the right direction, and it all works together. So these court cases at the Supreme Court, all of these things make a significant difference, because as the rulings are going against states like North Carolina for gerrymandering, as the rulings are going against states like Wisconsin for voter ID, we're going to see it will shift how these elections are being handled in these smaller races, which lead to the overturning of the first seat by, I don't have her name, the winner of the House seat in New Hampshire, the state House seat in New Hampshire. And so, and again, that was an unexpected win for the resistance. And so we've got to be encouraged by those small victories. Hopefully we can put a lot of energy behind Jon Ossoff in Georgia 06. I am more encouraged now than I have ever been. Again, I said earlier that I thought that 85 was not going to be fixed by the time this runoff happened. I thought that that would be a significant contributor to people's angst and anger in association with crumbling infrastructure as touted by Donald Trump. I thought that the Georgia 85 bridge collapse did play into the hat. It was a feather in the cap of Donald Trump's message against voices like John Lewis, Representative John Lewis, who endorsed Jon Ossoff. And so hopefully we will see that this combination of efforts will work to our favor. And hopefully, if the Trump-Russia investigation keeps going at pace, Trump will be less able and willing to, reach his neck out. I mean, before the original election, Trump tweeted in favor of Karen Handel, Karen Handel. He basically endorsed her. And so if he does that again, it could sway the election towards her. But if he's distracted, it might help us. It might, prevent that from going in that direction. And that's what we absolutely need, because that is the biggest seat up for grabs. That is the biggest step towards actually protecting healthcare, towards actually protecting from a budget passing, and also a step in the right direction towards an impeachment proceeding. And so with that, as always, I want to thank our friends of the show. I've been so encouraged as of late with the support that we've been getting from the show, just with the subscriptions and also the donations. So I want to thank this is a repeat donor, but this is our first time that someone has donated twice to one show. So I want to thank Jesse from Lincoln, Nebraska. I want to also thank Rupa N. I want to thank Delisha M. of Carrollton, Texas. I want to thank Allison S. I want to thank Alex Z. of Sugar Land, Texas. A lot of love from Texas today. Suzanne G. I want to thank Raymond J. from Durham, North Carolina. I want to thank Byron S. from Mableton, Georgia. I want to thank Elizabeth R. from Phoenix, Arizona. Ian A., who is a repeat donor to the show. Karen I., another repeat donor from San Francisco, California. And with Ramadan approaching, I just want to wish a blessed Ramadan on all of our Muslim brothers and sisters around the world. I want you to remain encouraged, just keeping peace in mind. You're going to get some flack from ignorant bigots who, like Piers Morgan, who call on Muslims to denounce ISIS, and yet those Christians don't denounce the Klan. So we are with you in spirit and in peace, and I just wish you a very blessed and peaceful Ramadan. It is, I don't think it's very often that Ramadan coincides with the summer solstice, but again, Ramadan starts Friday, and I think it ends on June 24th. I think the summer solstice is June 22nd. And I know for people who are fasting, it is rough to do it in the summer months. And so the longest days are going to be days that our Muslim brothers and sisters are going to be fasting. And so please keep that in mind, that this is a particularly challenging time for them to be fasting. And so let's keep them in prayer. Let us support them. Let's uplift them just in our thoughts, in our words, in our kind deeds. And let's just try to embody the spirit of a news-centered focus on unity and peace, just in this time where we have terrorism is still a thing, and we are working from within to assuage our our situation with Donald Trump. So with all that said, I'd like to, as always, ask you to relax, relate, and resist. Thank you.
Too complex.